Have you ever heard the saying, "A leopard can't change its spots"? Today, we're diving into a powerful story that brings this idea to life. A story about a lonely fisherman, a wild tiger, and a lesson that might just change the way you see the world. Our story begins in a small, quiet fishing village. Here lived a man named Mr. John. He wasn't just a fisherman. He was a man defined by a deep-seated loneliness. His days were spent on the water, his nights in an empty house. The silence was his constant companion, and he yearned for a connection, for someone or something to share his life with. One day, a traveling merchant passed through the village, carrying a strange and exotic cargo. Among his wares was a tiny, striped tiger cub, its eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Mr. John was instantly captivated. He saw not a wild animal, but a small, helpless creature that needed care. In that moment, he imagined a future where this cub would grow up by his side. A loyal and loving companion, filling the void in his heart. Against all logic, he made a trade. He gave away a significant portion of his hard-earned catch in exchange for the tiger cub. His heart swelled with hope as he brought the little creature home. News of Mr. John's new pet spread through the village like wildfire. The villagers were stunned. They approached him with caution, their faces etched with concern. "Mr. John," one said, "that is a wild animal. It belongs in the jungle, not in a house." The village elder, a man whose wisdom was respected by all, took him aside. "John," he warned gravely, "you can feed a tiger. You can raise a tiger, but you can never tame a tiger. Its nature is wild, and that is something you cannot change." But Mr. John was blinded by his optimism and his desperate need for companionship. He heard their words, but he didn't listen. He saw their worried expressions, but chose to ignore them. In his mind, love was the ultimate force. He believed that with enough affection and care, he could rewrite the laws of nature. He was convinced that his love would be the exception to the rule, that he could nurture the wildness out of the tiger and replace it with unwavering loyalty. He dismissed their warnings as baseless fears, confident in his ability to create the bond he so deeply craved. And so, Mr. John began raising the tiger cub. He named him Stripes and poured all his affection into him. He fed him the best fish, played with him for hours, and built a large, comfortable enclosure for him. He spoke to the cub as if it were a child, sharing his thoughts, his dreams, and his fears. As the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, the tiny cub grew. It transformed into a magnificent, powerful tiger, its muscles rippling beneath its glossy coat. To anyone watching from a distance, it seemed Mr. John had succeeded. The tiger appeared completely domesticated. It would respond to his cause, rub its massive head against his legs in a display of affection, and eat gently from his hand. The sight was both astonishing and unsettling. Mr. John felt a profound sense of pride and vindication. He had proven everyone wrong. He had tamed the untamable. His loneliness was gone, replaced by the warm, steady presence of his majestic companion. The bond felt real, unbreakable. He had found the family he always wanted, wrapped in a beautiful, striped package. But nature, as it turns out, has a very long memory. Life continued in this seemingly idyllic way for several years. The bond between man and tiger was the talk of the region. But one day, disaster struck in a way no one could have predicted. Mr. John had sailed to a neighboring village to sell his fish and trade for supplies. While he was there, a violent storm rolled in, triggering a massive landslide that completely blocked the only path back to his home. He was trapped. Days turned into a grueling wait. 1 day, 2 days, 3, 4, 5. For 5 agonizing days, Mr. John was stuck, his mind consumed with worry for the tiger he had left behind. He knew the tiger's food supply would have run out. He imagined Stripes, alone, hungry, and confused in his enclosure. The thought gnawed at him, filling him with a terrible mix of guilt and anxiety. Back at home, the magnificent tiger, who had never known a day of hunger, was beginning to feel the sharp, unfamiliar pangs of starvation. The routine was broken. The comforting presence of his provider was gone. Finally, on the 6th day, the path was cleared. Mr. John rushed home, his heart pounding with a desperate urgency. He ran to the enclosure and saw his tiger pacing restlessly, its eyes glowing with an intensity he had never seen before. The majestic creature, he knew, was still there, but it was overshadowed by something else, something raw and primal. When the tiger saw him, it let out a low, guttural growl, a sound that was less a greeting and more a demand. Mr. John's heart broke. He saw not a threat, but a creature in distress. His logic was drowned out by a tidal wave of emotion guilt for leaving, pity for its hunger, and an overwhelming love that demanded he comfort his companion. Ignoring the warning signs, ignoring the change in the tiger's eyes, ignoring that deep, unsettling growl, he fumbled with the lock on the cage. He needed to hold him, to soothe him, to reassure him that he was back and everything would be okay. He swung the gate open. In that single, fateful moment, everything changed. The tiger, driven not by malice but by 5 days of starvation, saw not its beloved caretaker. It saw only a source of food. The primal instinct for survival, suppressed for years under layers of domestication and affection, roared back to life with unstoppable force. Before Mr. John could even register what was happening, the tiger lunged. The wild nature that the village elder had warned of. The nature Mr. John believed he had erased with love reasserted itself with brutal finality. The man who had ignored reality in favor of his feelings paid the ultimate price. His companion, in its most desperate moment, became his end. The tragic end of Mr. John and his tiger is more than just a somber tale. It's a profound metaphor for a critical life lesson that many of us learn the hard way. The tiger represents those things in our lives that are fundamentally unchangeable. Think about it. It could be a toxic relationship where you keep hoping the other person will change, despite them showing you their true nature time and time again. You pour in your love, your patience, your energy, believing that you can fix them, only to get hurt repeatedly. It could be a risky business venture or a bad investment. All the data, all the advice from experts points to it being a bad idea. But your gut feeling, your emotional attachment to the potential outcome, makes you ignore the red flags. You convince yourself, this time it will be different, and you open the cage, only to watch your finances get mauled. It could even be a personal habit or an addiction that you know is destructive. But you keep telling yourself you have it under control. Mr. John's mistake wasn't his love for the tiger. His mistake was letting his emotions completely blind him to the reality of what the tiger was. He wanted the tiger to be a loyal companion so badly that he ignored its fundamental nature. He refused to accept that a wild animal, no matter how lovingly raised, is still a wild animal. The story teaches us the critical importance of seeing things for what they are, not what we wish they were. It's about recognizing that some natures are fixed. You cannot turn a tiger into a house cat, no matter how much you love it. The most compassionate and wisest thing to do is not to try and change its nature, but to respect it and keep a safe distance. This doesn't mean we should be cynical or stop loving. It means our love and our decisions must be grounded in reality. It means acknowledging the red flags, listening to the warnings, both from others and from our own intuition, having the courage to set boundaries. We must have the wisdom to know when to open our hearts and when to keep the cage door safely locked. Because ignoring reality, especially when driven by powerful emotions, can leave us vulnerable to the very things we tried so hard to tame. It's a choice between a comforting fantasy and a potentially harsh reality. And, as Mr. John's story shows, choosing the fantasy can have devastating consequences. So, take a look at your own life. Are there any tigers you're trying to tame? A situation or person whose fundamental nature you are choosing to ignore out of hope or emotion? Perhaps it's time to take a step back, to see it for what it truly is, and to make a choice that prioritizes your own safety and well-being. Acknowledging the truth isn't failure, it's wisdom. Thank you so much for watching and for letting me share this powerful story with you. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that makes you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.